I'm Barun Mitra. I am a free thinker and a writer. I've been published widely across the world. I also co-founded and directed the Liberty Institute, an independent think tank. And I'm going to speak today on what is an ideology. Ideology is a bridge between politics, the public, and policy, the public policy that's the outcome. It's a rule of thumb which connects these three elements into one coherent, cohesive whole for laypersons to understand that everything conforms to the beliefs that they hold. So ideology is a very simple rule of thumb that all of us use all the time to instantly grasp what is the essence of the issue that is being proposed and whether it's in line with my own beliefs and values or not. So whether we accept it or we reject it, it becomes instantaneous. And that's the topic today, what is an ideology. And the two things, one thing that I really want to look at is why do we need it? Why do we need ideology? And how can we become conscious of the ideology that we may hold? But what I do not intend to do much is in terms of what are the different ideologies that are there, which we all know they are there in politics and elsewhere, a whole range of ideologies, but I'm not going to look into detail into the different facets of different ideologies, but the whole focus is on why do we need an ideology and how do we understand ourselves, our own ideology in a more conscious manner so that it's something that we can actually grasp its implication and long-term effects. Politics is about mediating differences. Mediating differences across, within families, within communities, within society and country. That politics is a platform whereby different stakeholders in whichever formation, family, community, country, can negotiate and settle and resolve whatever differences they might have. And ideology is the instrument which makes certain decisions acceptable or not acceptable. So ideology is kind of an instrument of politics. And politics is a way of mediating differences. And therefore, the reason why we need it is because it provides us a vision of political direction that we can grasp. It works, how it works is ideology provides a roadmap to engage in politics. That where should politics take us? Ideology helps us decide on what kind of policies that would be acceptable or not. And ideology is also a motivating factor because it motivates people, that is, who could participate. So those who are aligned or have an inclination towards a particular kind of an ideology would become active to take that ideology forward. So the why, how, what and who, these are the questions that the ideology actually answers for a particular set of political beliefs. And if we like I said at the beginning, that instead of looking at political ideologies, I am looking at what is an ideology. And therefore, the key idea is the ideology of politics. That is, the exact way that politics, ideology shapes the functioning of politics. So if you look at it as a triangle, that ideology mediates between the ideals and the people. That is, the ideals are related to people in terms of some, moral justification, some marketing strategies whereby an ideal is marketed to the people through the ideology, medium of the ideology. The other is ideology shapes policies. So ideology provides us a justifying framework for a particular set of policies. So that is one purpose. The other purpose also ideology serves is that people, when they buy into a particular ideology, they provide a political capital to ensure that a particular set of policies gets politically accepted. No? So the ideology balances all this, and the platform through which it happens is politics. So all the three components, that is the ideals of the ideology, the public with all their variations and different sections and segments of society, and the range of public policy choices that are available to us, they kind of get a concrete shape with a sense of a coherence through this medium of ideology, and politics seeks to achieve that. So which is, I said, that this is the way politics mediates the differences that people may have among each other, also with respect to sets of policies, because you do have range of policy options for any given issue of the day. Yeah, so ideology is integral, and what I'm again repeating, that this is not particular to any particular ideology. What I'm saying is very generic to the whole idea of politics and political ideology. So if you look at ideology in contemporary India, you could choose a set of issues and you ask any lay person, the chances are he or she will be instantly be able to tell you which party or the political formation it is aligned with. So for instance, if you say talk of the holy cow, we instantly know which particular formation is going to speak of that. If we talk of diversity and pluralism in India, respect for India's diversity and pluralism, we instantly know which particular formation we are talking of. If we talk of, say, for instance, the Uniform Civil Code, or we talk of negotiating the Uniform Civil Code, or we say the personal choices should determine what our civil code should be, all these three gets classified in the Indian context with three distinct political formations that currently prevails. Similarly, with on economic platform, if we talk of a national economic strength, or if we talk of economic regulation, or if we talk of economic redistribution, again these three strands can get very easily identified with different sets of ideologies and therefore its corresponding political actors and participants to that. And this actually illustrates that while many of us may not even be conscious of the ideology that we hold, but it is the ideology that is making us grasp what particular point of view or what particular platform is acceptable to us or which we are the ones that we reject. So this decision, whether we know it or not, is coming from our understanding, or I shouldn't say understanding, from our grasp of, our intrinsic grasp of ideology. And this means that it can help us actually ask a more fundamental questions about the nature of politics itself. For instance, ideology projects a set of values, and those set of values shapes the political behavior, not just of the leaders but also of the people as a whole. So for instance, as a political objective, we can ask what's the objective of politics? Is it to capture power, or is it to empower people? So the value sets underlying it will determine which way we are more inclined towards. Similarly, if we talk of government institutions, then is
ideology helping us have a restraint on the state, or is the ideology an instrument for the state to repress the people? Again, this is the value sets that are going to determine which of the two options we are going to opt for. And I'm putting it very crudely. Of course, there are many nuances and you will have various graded options, but for simplicity, I have put it in like binary options to make it as stark as possible. Similarly, about the question of India's diversity. At one level we talk of the wide diversity of India in terms of religion, language, caste, ethnicity, gender, and everything else. So whether we look at diversity as a strength, or we look at diversity that is to be used to divide. Because we have the diversity, so should we use those fracture lines to reinforce the fractures, or is diversity seen more holistically and therefore a source of strength? Similarly, about democracy itself, do we look at democracy as a majoritarian democracy, that means majority rules irrespective, or do we look at democracy as an institution that can only function when minority opinions are protected? Right? So these choices are possible only when the values underlying the ideology are shaped by or is shaping the politics of the day in any society. And like I said, ideology contains a set of values, and politics in turn reflects those values. It is through those values that politics mobilizes public opinion on one side and crafts policies on the other side in a manner that the public opinion will sustain the policies to be carried through. And therefore, when you a particular ideology with a specific set of values would help us identify what would be the political objective. So for instance, is the political objective to capture power, for instance elections? The objective is to capture power, political power, or is the political objective to empower people so that people are part of the political process and the institutions that governs and shapes the country. Likewise for the government, that government as an institution, whether the political values are work as a restraint on the state, or are they used to repress the people or repress those who may not agree? So these choices, the answers that we select or we opt for will be decided by the ideological values that we are carrying, and the politics would reflect those ideological values. The same goes for India's diversity, that whether diversity is seen as a strength or diversity is an opportunity to sow or leverage the fractures that exist. India is the largest democracy, and therefore this question also becomes, as an institution, democracy as an institution itself, that whether democracy is majoritarian or democracy respects and recognizes the minority opinion. So these choices have been shaped by the values that politics carry, or the ideology gives to politics. And there is no real escape, whether we are conscious of the ideology we are carrying and the implication that it may have in all its facets, or whether we are unconscious of it. And my attempt here is to try to make us realize the way we hold our own political beliefs in the shape of ideology. Originally, or in a simpler form, a political spectrum or an ideological spectrum is seen as a straight line, so in which you can have different compartments. Say on the right, extreme right, you could begin with fascism, conservatism, socialism, communism. So if you divide it in 4 broad categories that are currently more in vogue. The same thing can be divided in terms of dictatorship at one end, democracy in the middle, and monarchy or authoritarian regimes at another. Another way of dividing the same, like this is a way depends on how we are chopping up the spectrum, like the electromagnetic spectrum. Different parts of the spectrum have a different way of communicating to the audience that they are communicating. So at another end we may have one segment that seeks change, social and economic. Another segment where status quo is predominant. On one extreme we may have radical revolutionary. At another we may have reactionary. At one end we may talk of nationalization of the economy. At another end we may talk of privatization. At one end we may focus on social justice. At another end we may focus on individual freedom and liberty. And these most of the time seem clear and separate issues, there's no overlap. And which is how it is perceived, because that is how political opinion gets mobilized and polarized, because they are seen as very distinct, and which is what I said earlier, that you raise few key issues, people are instantly able to know in which of the political formations that particular view is supportive of or not. But in reality, that may not always hold, in fact most of the time. And the best example of that is that radical revolutionaries may seem radical when they are approaching political power. But once they approach or secure that power, they do everything but being a revolutionary, which means they become reactionary to hold the status quo, because now they have the power. Therefore, the straight line that we look at it may not really be a straight line, but have a lot of overlaps in between, and that overlap can happen, you can see across a large number of issues. Like for instance, a lot of the time we feel, and that's one of the reasons why we have such dislike or such apprehension about politics as such, or we feel politics is a bad word and most people would not like to directly engage into it. But if you really look at it, the whole, and you can say it for any society actually, that the range of political decisions that are being taken are not really that radical, even though the people taking them may look to be coming from very different sides of the political spectrum. So, doesn't matter who's in power, the political decisions taken tend to be more or less in line with what had happened in the past, and the shifts are very incremental, not radical, while the rhetoric is very radical. This is to preserve the illusion. This difference between rhetoric and reality in terms of policy making and pronouncements regarding policy is, I think, is important in order to preserve the illusion of a ideological coherence, when actually none may exist. And if you look at, for instance, if you were in the current context in the world, there are two currencies, ideas that have gained currencies. One is regarding democracy itself, that whether democracy is majoritarian, therefore majority rules, or democracy is populist. That is, and which is how the idea of populism as a distinct ism has evolved in the last 20 odd years. Now, if you really look at it, these two concepts cut across virtually every issue or every political ideology that we can think of. You can have traditional left in Indian politics who would like to redistribute, to have a more focus on social justice, redistribution to help the poor, etc. But by beginning in that route, they end up crafting policies that are extremely regulatory and end up with economic control of a completely different ideology that would have been originally conceived if they had begun from the economic route. Whereas those on the right, the same thing seems to have happened. That those on the right may begin with economic liberalism, free market, and for economic freedom, etc. But over time, the politics of it leads to regulatory state, capture by vested interest and therefore cronyism. This then said to be offset by either nationalism on the right or nationalism on the left. So these are used then to provide the coherence of values that is necessary to mask the convergence of actual politics that is occurring. That either from the left or from the right, either through the social route or through the economic route, both sides are trying to use the same mechanism, which is leverage the power of the state to deliver or claim to deliver whatever their particular objective is. So the convergence that is occurring is actually on statism. That it doesn't matter how you start on the left, it doesn't matter how we start on the right, but the convergence is occurring on the idea of the left, and that left is what then we are left with is what I would say, a three-dimensional spectrum, where on the one hand we'll have ideals and issues, like in the previous one, ideals and issues, but in the three-dimensional one we'll also have what would be inclination or momentum, that is which way we are tending towards. Which is, you could say, another way would be the time dimension that we generally have in the physical dimension of three dimension. That ideals, issues and inclinations are the three elements that are shaping various ideologies to traverse on the spectrum and often come through what may seem to be a very different route, but yet converge on the idea of the power of the state and the desire to leverage that power of the state as a common bond, irrespective of whether we are coming through the left and the socialist route or the right and the capitalist route. And which means that at one end of the spectrum, we may, if we look at it economically, we may say it's capitalist and socialist. At another end, we could look at it as liberty or freedom and state restricting and curbing choices and freedoms. But this is to be seen in the context of the inclination, that is the direction to which we are heading. Because it's not so much where we are that matters, but where we are headed, that is the key. And politics is helping us make that choice regarding the direction that we will head. The ideology or the value set is helping us choose the options that will take our inclinations one way or the other.